Well, hello plant lovers, it is Matthew in Melbourne welcoming you to my channel and thank you for finding me in this crowded world of orchid YouTube videos. Now on my channel I try to grow cold, cool, intermediate orchids here in Melbourne, Australia, either outside or inside without the help of any grow lights or humidifiers or any equipment, really just me and them inside or outside or not at all. So if that no frills kind of orchid growing sounds like your bag, do hit subscribe. I post every week on a Friday. My ramblings are pretty amateur. Lots of stumbles on the way, plant lovers, but it might help you figure out how to grow orchids in your climate. And what we're figuring out today is how, well, it's not really a question, is it, to unbox these. It is an unboxing video, plant lovers, because it's actually the last week of November, which means it's almost December, which means it's almost Christmas, which means I've been shopping. And yes, actually, here's the first cab off the rank, cat out of the bag. Look at this little thing. I was in a florist yesterday and they always have orchids. They're usually, pretty run-of-the-mill cymbidiums or oncidium hybrids. Great. And I will certainly get some of those when we move and I feel I need more oncidium love in my life. But I noticed this. Isn't it gorgeous? Just sitting and look, comparatively small. And it took me a second to realize that's a cymbidium. It's basically a dwarf cymbidium. A very, very pretty flower, sort of very soft pinks with white and yellow there in the middle of the lip, but a very compact form and no ID. It just has a price, which was $45, which is for a flowering cymbidium about right. But I had just never seen a compact cymbidium with an upright spike like that. All of the compact ones I have are very pendulous flowering type. So also it's very late in the season for cymbidiums to still be in bloom, I feel. But here it was, and I just could not leave it there on its own. So it came home with me, no ID, compact cymbidium with the prettiest little flowers, which makes me very happy. But what might make me even happier is the contents of these boxes. I've even got trays because yes, plant lovers, there might be one or two things in here. So, Stanley knife to the ready, shall we have a go? What's the backstory? The backstory with this is, firstly, look at that box. Doesn't live plants give you such a thrill when you see that on a box on your doorstep? Secondly, look, real stamps, not just a sticky printout label. How wonderful. I do love stamps. Perhaps many of you, like me, used to soak them off letters. Remember letters, kids? In my childhood? Anyway, these are unfortunately all covered with sellotape, so I shan't be steaming them off. But anyway, a little shoebox full of some delight. So shall we have a look? Now, the background to this is I made a Sarcochilis video a few weeks ago because all of mine are in bloom. In fact, most of them have now gone over, but a few of the later ones are still sort of doing their thing. And I mentioned that one of the best sort of Sarcochilis growers is kind of winding down their business and their website isn't really functioning. But I thought, oh, I should just check the website before I broadcast that to the world. And lo and behold, there was some great Sarcochilis. And so, plant lovers, what I decided in my infinite wisdom was that most of mine are flowered now, and I realized that the color palette that's really missing for me is that sort of orangey tangerine and the speckles thereof of that sort of color spectrum, which is a relatively new color introduction into the Sarcochilis hybriding. So I thought, well, I might not have this chance again because this business really is winding down. And there will be a point in the very near future where their website doesn't have new plants anymore. So I thought, well, Matthew, you need to get yourself some yellow, orange, tangerine Sarcochilis Exhibit A plant lovers. Look at that. They're like little neatly wrapped Egyptian antiquities, aren't they? Like little mummified cats. Oh, that's a strange thought. Anyway, let's have a look, shall we? All right, I'm going to tilt the camera down. There we are, so you can see exactly what is going on in the box. So, all wrapped up in newspaper. Let me get my tray handy. Oh, they're in pots. That's always handy. Now, always a risk, isn't it? Ordering things online because you never know what's going to happen. And not from these guys, but I have you know, even from reputable orchid growers, been disappointed in my life and had some plants that really weren't that thrilling. Ah, but this is a gorgeous plant. Look at that. So wonderful. And let's just shake off that shredded vital documents. Look at those wonderful new roots growing out. So this is probably, I would say, a second year seedling. And what you can see in there, look, is a second growth point emerging already. And in my Sarcocarpus video, I made that point that it's a contradiction. They're relatively slow growing in terms of they produce few leaves, but they bulk up very quickly, if that's a contradiction that makes any sense. So you will start to get multiple growth points quite quickly, and they will grow relatively quickly. So you can get a great specimen plant. And this, which is probably in the end of its first year, coming into its second year, would be flowering size. So that whole juncture about, which we'll get to later on, about buying seedling orchids, Sarcocarpus would be the one exception, I think, where you're guaranteed to get early blooming within the first year or two of you getting your plant. So there we go. So the company I got this from is called Mount Benac. Again, I'll put the link below. It may or may not have anything by the time this video goes to air. And this is Sarcocarpus Rebecca Tangerine crossed with Nugget Tall Gold. Now the Tall Gold sounds as though it's going to have upright flower spikes. So interesting. Anyway, it's a tangerine, Sarcocarpus, plant lovers. As I think is this one. Let's have a look. So I've made a repotting video, I think, about Sarcocarpus seedlings. I think if I have, I'll link it. But if you're going to repot anything, it's now late spring. It's the last week of November in Australia when I'm filming this. A good time because they would have finished flowering if they're mature plants. So it would be a good time to repot if you wanted to. But, and this is the new me, if you look at the size of the plant and the size of the pots, and knowing where it's come from, and the medium, we should have a little look. The medium is, as you can see, sort of small to medium bark, and it's quite fresh because the plants are so new. This, I would say, can stay in its pot for quite a while. Now, for aesthetic reasons, you could certainly repot it, which I might, but I also might not. I might just give them a chance to acclimatize for a year, settle in, and maybe next year decide if I'm going to repot them. Now, this one, so can you see the sort of the sheaths around the base there? So I think this one is probably a division of a larger plant, which is fine. Certainly it will be flowering size. It's also got a secondary growth point at the bottom. And this one is called Sarcocarpus Amber Soft Apricot, and it's crossed with itself. Soft apricot. That's the color I'm trying to describe to you. Apricot. Now, when I receive plants, generally the first thing I will do is water them with a diluted solution of a seaweed-based solution. And in Australia, it's called sea salt, not sea salt, as many people often say. Are you putting sea salt on your orchids? No, I'm not. I'm putting a seaweed solution, and the brand name is Sea Sol, S-E-A-S-O-L, sea salt. And there will be versions of that all around the world, I'm sure. Although I think sea salt its tentacles have reached far and wide, so you might even be able to find it. But anyway, it doesn't matter about the brand. The thing is something that's a tonic, not a fertilizer. And it just, I think, helps the plant settle in. Look at that one. Look how healthy and fabulous that is. Look at those new aerial roots appearing. And this has got, 2 or 3 new growth points at the base there. Wonderful. These are all very, very healthy plants. And this one is called Sarcocarpus Rebecca Tangerine crossed with Sunny Sunset. Definitely a color theme. That's the color theme I went for. Now that little pot, that one, I might have to repot. And the last Sarcocarpus cab off the rank is this one. Oh, there we go. Oh, spreading confetti everywhere. There we are. So there's that one. Very fine, upstanding young specimen. And this one is Sarcocarpus Roberta D. Elliott crossed with Snow Heart Best. Goodness me. There are so many, there we go, so many hybrids of Sarcocalas. It's impossible to keep up, really. Anyway, for me, it was really just about the colour and the form of these flowers. So I went in a particular colorway, which was sort of tangerine apricot, and I wanted a variety of solid color and spots because I've only got one that's flowered and it's basically white with a tangerine center to the flower. So these, I hope, have rounded out my Sarcocalis collection because plant lovers, yes, you may have observed, I have a few. Okay, plant lovers, box number 2, shall we? So this again, this is a follow-up to a video I made a few weeks ago about Cattleya. So I have managed to get to bloom a few Cattleyas. So I've managed to get to bloom the smaller orangey based ones, which do very well in Melbourne, and they are beautiful, beautiful sort of scarlet orange, beautiful fragrance. Very, very lovely Cattleya, and it's in one of my videos. And I've also got to bloom a beautiful white plant that was sold to me as a species, but everyone here thinks it's not. Again, I don't care. It's a beautiful flower, really large, beautiful trumpet, perfectly crispy white. What else? And a few sort of mega hybrids of Cattleyas and Lalias have bloomed for me. But I kind of want some classic Cattleyas. So I got these two to bloom, and they are basically versions of the same thing. And looking at their ancestry, they're all drawn from a very similar stock. So it's not surprising that these two have ended up being not dissimilar. Anyway, in my infinite wisdom, oh, look, plant lovers, I thought I am going to get me some cool growing Cattleya divisions. So I know what the flowers are like and the plants are large enough to bloom, because what I have also realized, plant lovers, is that seedlings are a mug's game for Cattleyas. I'd much rather the orchid grower matures up the seedlings until they're in their 3rd or 4th year, and then I'll give them a go. Because I don't know about you, but in the early days of my orchid growing, I really had no idea. So I just assumed, oh, seedlings, great. Like many other types of plants, seedlings tend to mature quite quickly, particularly in the perennial world. You know, you'll get blooms from a seedling in the same year of some perennials. So being so inexperienced, I thought the same rule applied. Oh no. As we know, some orchid species can take up to a decade to flower from seed. Others, Sarcocalas though, for example, one of the exceptions I think can flower within 1st or 2nd year, and some Oncidium types will flower quite early in the piece, but you're still going to need maybe 3 or 4 years. Anyway, so what I decided to do, oh my goodness, look at this, is get myself some Cattleya divisions, or Cattleya, as someone once quite pointedly corrected. Now I do think, yes, I do think there is, I think this is a seedling, which I probably got by accident. Let's have a look. Oh no, this is not a seedling. This, oh, and look at it. This is a plant called Erstadella wallisii. There you go. It's sort of an epidendrum-y type of plant. And I have a similar one, the name of which escapes me, but it's similar. I've made a video about it, and it has a beautiful pink flower. Well, this one has a very different flower color and structure, but you can see quite a similar growth habit, but actually no, quite different. Anyway, so there we are. That's that one. That's the first cab off the rank. Very pretty flower, and quite a good division, obviously, and it's got lots of great new growth. So that one will need to be repotted and made well. What is next? Oh, another small package. What is this going to be? There we are. This looks very Oncidium-y, which is odd. I don't remember ordering those. Let's get the tissue off. All right. Oh, this is it's an Oncidium megamix, and it's called Possum Wolf Carolyn, and I forget what that ONCSA stands for, but perhaps you will know. Anyway, it's an Oncidium Alliance plant. And why did I buy this? It must be fabulous. Plant lovers, it's either the flower type form or the origin, which might be cool climate, of some of the species that were hybridized to produce this plant. Anyway, look at that. Fantastic new growths. There's just several pinging up and quite mature pseudobulbs. So yeah, there we go. That's probably well into maybe its second or third year. Very, very healthy plant. Whatever it is, which I forget, I'm sure it's wonderful. Now, I also ordered from these guys some Vander baskets because my Cattleyas are going to be in these baskets outside because they're all cool growers. All right, so let me show you what I bought. Look at that. And goodness me, it's actually transported well. So one of the issues about larger plants, obviously in divisions or potted plants, is that they often don't ship well, but this one is looking remarkably well transported. Well done. Look at that. Fabulous looking plant. Sensational. So the company that I've ordered these from is called Rosella Orchids. There we go. And as you can see, it's in New South Wales, which is the state above me. That's the state that has Sydney in it. Oh, and the tag doesn't have the name of the plant because it's snapped. So the old tag is disintegrated, but it's a form of Cattleya, walkeriana, and this one is Adonis, a god of a Cattleya, and a beautiful division. And it is just sent up there, its new growth, which should, oh, in fact, there's two. There's a second growth there. And there's a third one there. My goodness me. So all of those should, in principle, bear flower spikes when they emerge. So there you go. Quite a squat plant, 2 leaves and a form of the species. And it's a cool growing Cattleya. So that should love my Melbourne weather. Look at that. What an amazing plant. Not inexpensive to buy such things. However, if you count the number of Cattleya seedlings that I threw away after this winter or the previous winter, because all the seedlings tend to die, not all of them, but many, maybe three or four, well, maybe more seedlings adds up to the price of a division of a flowering size plant. Depends where you are too. You know, places in the States, for example, where there's so much more. There's many more growers and more nurseries and more options. I'm sure it's less expensive, but in Australia, where the market's much smaller, it's expensive. Anyway, the other thing to point out too about all of these growers that I'm mentioning, no Australian grower can ship live plants internationally. So don't try. Don't ask them, don't email them, because it can't happen and it won't happen. It's illegal. So really, all of those location suggestions are just for viewers in Australia and not in quarantine states. I'm not sure if these guys ship to the quarantine states in Australia. So for those of you not in Australia, there are certain states in Australia that have quarantine restrictions internally. So if you are traveling, for example, to Western Australia or to Tasmania or to Queensland, you can't take fruit with you or live plants or seeds. They have to go through quite stringent controls. But internally, there are nurseries that have the appropriate license to do that. So they isolate the plants and make sure that they're healthy and et cetera, et cetera. So you can do it in Australia. It's just you've got to find a nursery that has the correct licensing to do it. Anyway, that's a little bit of botanical background for those of you not in Australia. Oh, there we go. Now look at this. So it's interesting, isn't it? These are very sort of classic Cattleya pots that you would buy from nurseries. So short, wide pans, really, in black plastic, which we know I'm not a lover of, but you can actually get that same dimension in terracotta. And what you could do is just drill holes around it. This actually doesn't, but it has quite large sort of aeration holes around the side and obviously holes on the bottom. And I just find that a bit more attractive. But I guess the point being though that the roots of these plants don't go down very deep. They spread because they're epiphytes, so they're not sort of deep prospecting roots. They're more shallow roots. Anyway, look at that one. That's quite a wizened old baby, isn't it? Look at that. Seen a few things. Have we got new growth? Yes, we've got a beautiful new growth here. And that looks like a fairly fresh-ish leaf there. And I think there's another one there. That leaf looks fairly fresh too. Oh, this growth in the middle here. There we go. So we've got multiple growth points, which is fantastic because each new growth will produce its sheath and a flower spike, hopefully. So the more growth points you have, the more chance you get to bloom. And as you can see from this, perhaps, so this was a division a while ago. So you can see here, this is the rhizome of the plant and it's been cut here from the mother plant. And then this bit has been planted and it's grown along. And you could probably hope to get growth points starting coming out here too. The more you leave the plant to mature, the more growth points you're going to get. Anyway, now this one does still have its tag, which hasn't disintegrated. And it's basically a different form of that same orchid, walkeriana. And this one is coerulea, Wenzel sun, I think, crossed with itself. So there we go. So these are both cooler climates Cattleyas that will do very well in my climate here in Melbourne, outside all year. They can take our cooler winter minimums, just keep them on the drier side so that you don't get rot, because that can happen. So I think the issue with seedlings is, for me, just to bulk them up really so that they are mature enough, old enough to manage the cooler winter weather, because it's quite hard to keep them hydrated and yet not too wet in winter, a seedling. So you can often rot them or desiccate them because it's a hard balance to meet. Anyway, there we are, plant lovers. Look at that. How exciting. Now, jury's out whether I'll repot these immediately. They're very healthy in where they are. They're both of them in large bark. The bark looks fine. The plants look fine. I might just leave things as they are for the minute, but I could also just literally plonk them in there, not the pot, but kind of try and take the plant out without too much disturbance, although that isn't going to happen. But anyway, so we'll see what happens. Anyway, there is that Cattleya looking wonderful. So there we are, plant lovers. That's kind of my early Christmas present to myself. Here is our orchid selection for the day. Thank you for indulging my orchid shopping. I really am not buying that many now. I know it seems ridiculous that I am, but I'm trying not to be, because we are moving and it is going to be a journey to move everything. But anyway, these just had to be mine this week. So plant lovers, thank you very much for watching. I hope wherever you are, your orchid world is exciting. And if it's the end of the year and it's gift giving time for you, why not indulge yourself in a little bit of orchid self-medication? Anyway, I'll keep you up to date with these. There'll be nothing to report for a while, but the Sarcocatus will probably bloom next spring. So in a year's time, we'll have a check-in with them. But in the meantime, plant lovers, I hope all is well where you are. I'm looking forward to seeing you next week, but until then, take care.